otherwise known as Profondo Rosso, was written by Bernardino Zappani and Dario Argento. It marks the start of what would become Argento's most well-known Giallo era, as well as showcasing several elements that make for a recognizable Argento film. It tells the story of a pianist who witnesses the murder of a psychic. He teams up with a journalist to unravel the mystery of who the killer is before others, including himself, are murdered. This is my review of Deep Red. The movie begins how most holidays spent with family members end. We then switch to a demonstration of sorts involving psychic abilities, presented by Professor Giordani, played by Glauco Mari. Our psychic, Helga Ullman, played by Matcha Merrill, proceeds to pick out audience members to show her abilities. She can't foresee the future, which is rather unfortunate for her given what happens later. Everything seems to be going well until Helga picks up on someone in the audience who has committed murder.
You have killed, and you will kill again.
You know, I don't think it's such a great idea to try to call someone who obviously has no issue with killing someone out like that. We get an odd little interlude of equally odd images and objects. But hey, we also get some music from Goblin. And now the killer shows up at Helga's door, and they're not fucking around. We take a reprieve from the slaughter by meeting Marcus, played by the late David Hemmings, and his friend Carlo, played by Gabriele Lavia. They're both pianists, but it seems that Carlo favors the bottle a little bit more than his instrument. After picking his friend up off the ground, they hear a scream. Carlo doesn't exactly have the most appropriate reaction.
Hinno to thee, virgin!
As Marcus heads home, the horrifying attack on Helga catches his eye. He rushes to investigate only to find that it's too late for Helga, and a mysterious trenchcoat-wearing individual disappears into the night. This doesn't provide any answers for the police, so there's not much that can be done. Nothing like a bloody crime scene to introduce another character, though. Gianna, played by the late Daria Nicolodi, is a journalist who seems keen on picture-taking, just like any good journalist, really. Once Marcus meets up with Carlo again, informing him of what happened, Marcus questions him on whether he happened to see who the killer was.
Carter? Huh? Did you see that man?
Hey, I think we should get closer so we can hear each other better. What? Never mind. What? I can't hear you from over here. At Helga's funeral, Gianna provides Marcus with a bit of insight and asks him to help her with her story on this incident. Perhaps if they work together, they can find out who the murderer is. Apparently, Marcus agrees, as they meet with Giordani and Bardi, played by Piero Mazzinghi, to go over what happened the night Helga was killed. And bless Giordani because he doesn't just tell them what Helga said, he reenacts it.
No, one must ever know.
There's nothing terribly helpful that comes from this, other than Barty mentioning that he saw someone leave their seat at some point during the demonstration. Afterwards, we get a bit of bonding, if you will, between Gianna and Marcus.
Why do you keep on with this nervous bit? It is in my nature. It's my artistic temperament.
Somehow I feel called out. After an offhanded and rather sexist comment from Marcus, Gianna challenges him to, as she calls it, Indian wrestling. It's just arm wrestling, which Marcus promptly loses. Defeated, Marcus leaves to find Carlo. However, Carlo isn't home, so Marcus ends up speaking with Carlo's mother instead. Marta, played by the late Clara Calamé, is a very forgetful woman, but after she proceeds to talk with him about her former career in acting, she tells Marcus that Carlo went to the home of Richie. Turns out Richie is, well, not a straight man. According to information on this movie, he's actually labeled with the rather dated term of transvestite. Ironically, Richie is played by Geraldine Hooper. This means that Carlo isn't exactly straight either. But aside from that, Carlo is drowning his unknown sorrows once again. During the walk to the bar, Carlo and Marcus have a discussion about the night of the murder. Marcus is, as he says, fascinated with trying to figure it out. But Carlo advises him to just let it go, and even leave to avoid the mysterious murderer altogether. That evening, Marcus gets a visitor. Nothing good ever comes from creepy music sung by children. Marcus, it's time to invest in a shotgun. Marcus is at least sharp enough to notice that something isn't right here, and proceeds to make it seem like he's not aware that someone's lurking in his house. He's literally saved by the bell when Gianna calls him, and the stalker leaves the building. The following day, Marcus buys a children's record that contains a song that matches the one he had heard last night. He brings this up with Giordani and Barty, who tell him that the killer is likely highly mentally unstable, and uses certain things to recreate an event in their life that, shall we say, puts them in the killing mood. Barty sends Marcus to the library after a book that tells the story of a haunted house, involving a child's voice that had been heard there. Unfortunately, the story doesn't give Marcus much information, so he calls Gianna and asks her to try to get in contact with the author of the book. Here we get another goblin interlude with the demented version of Toyland. Afterward, we meet the author, Amanda Righetti, played by the late Giuliana Calendra, at her home. And she's not the only one in her house. Somebody's running around hanging Cabbage Patch Kids in here. In short order, the murderer knocks Amanda out, and then proceeds to drown/scald her to death in her bathtub. As she lay on the ground dying, Amanda manages to write something on the wall in the steam. Shortly after, Marcus arrives and discovers Amanda's body. There's no time to deal with a body though, since he has to look for a plant. Specifically, the kind of plant that's shown in the photo of the haunted house. Turns out that this plant is very special and not terribly common, so when Marcus finally finds someone who's worked with it before, it's considered a win. He and Giordani meet up for a chat as Marcus wants him to investigate Amanda's bathroom a bit more.
You think they've discovered the body by now?
You know, that's a good point, but I'd like to point out that that's probably not a sentence you should be saying too loudly in the middle of a market. Giordani takes a look at the scene of Amanda's murder. Meanwhile, Marcus is off to stalk various neighborhoods to find this haunted house. Once he does, he speaks with Rodi, played by the late Furio Menaconi, about its history. Said history means that Rodi doesn't want to go into the house, so he sends his daughter Olga, played by Nicoletta Elmi, to accompany Marcus. If Olga looks familiar, that's because she grew up to be the usherette in Demons. During his exploration of the house, Marcus does find something interesting. A childlike painting on the wall that seems to depict some less than holly jolly events. Due to Marcus being out so late, Giordani is unable to reach him about his own findings. And there's another more traumatic problem afoot. Fuck the psycho killer, that is terrifying. Speaking of, our mysterious murderer kills Giordani by slamming his mouth repeatedly into corners, and then stabbing him through the neck. Marcus returns home to notice something that he hadn't before. There is a window shown in the picture on the book page that he didn't see when he was visiting the haunted house. So he returns in the middle of the night to discover what is being hidden here. This involves almost breaking his neck while scaling the outside of the building. On the bright side, his efforts pay off when he finds the purposely hidden room containing the purposely hidden body, and just in time for him to get knocked out too. When Marcus wakes up, he's been dragged outside by Gianna, and the house is on fire. Well, shit. Now all that evidence is lost. Or is it?
Who gave you this?
I saw it at school.
Marcus and Gianna head straight to the school archives and start combing through drawings. Having heard something, Gianna goes to investigate.
Gianna?
It doesn't take long for Marcus to find Gianna, who's apparently been stabbed. Since he knows who made that drawing, it's time to confront Carlo, who says he now has to kill Marcus. But the police arrive to disrupt the whole thing. Carlo runs off only to get dragged. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think he's dead. With Gianna in the hospital, Marcus wanders around and starts to uncover some inconsistencies, with Carlo being the murderer. So he returns to Helga's apartment. Turns out, Carlo's mother has been the murderer all along, and Carlo was just trying to cover things up for her. She hasn't exactly been stable for a while. You see, this is why you don't wear jewelry when you're going on a murderous rampage. And with some more of Goblin's score, the credits roll. The acting all around is pretty decent, though this isn't a popular choice, and he certainly isn't flawless. To say the least, I actually kind of like the character of Marcus. I'm going to contribute this to David Hemmings more than anything else, as I imagine that a different actor in the part would have changed my view of the character. Can you really be upset with a Goblin soundtrack? I don't think so. And we get plenty of goblin here. It sounds like a euphemism for something. It simultaneously amps you up for what's about to happen, while giving a rather eerie tone. Goblin's work, combined with Giorgio Gasolini's, is a memorable element of the movie. The artistic choices, which are synonymous with Argento's work as well as Giallo as a whole, I really liked here. While we can all laugh at the blood's paint-like quality, the practical effects by Giovanni Morosi are decent. The kills are pretty unique and should make lots of horror fans happy. The attempt to misdirect the viewer into believing that Carlo is the murderer isn't terribly effective. That doesn't mean that it takes away from the mystery of who the killer actually is, but it does seem rather shallow. If you remember Carlo being present at the bar when Marcus sees the murderer walk away, then that element unravels immediately. There are scenes that go on for longer than necessary, like the one where Marcus is hanging on for dear life outside of the haunted house. I said the acting is decent, but not all of it is great. Nicolodi isn't her best in this film, but this was also her first time working with Argento, and she did get better in subsequent films. It feels like the mystery element of the plot isn't quite strong enough. The leads, if you will, that Marcus and other characters grasp onto seem pretty shallow. With all that being said, I'm giving Deep Red 7.5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. This was one of the first few Giallo films that I had ever seen, when Joe Bob Briggs was presenting it. I wasn't sure what to make of it at first, but once I explored more Italian horror, I came to appreciate Deep Red more. Deep Red was the first time that Dario Argento, Goblin, and Daria Nicolodi worked together, so for that reason alone, it holds a certain importance. I'm no expert on Giallo. That would be sweet and spooky. But this isn't the best example of the genre. It's likely not the one you would point to when someone asks you for a great recommendation. However, the film is very important in Argento's filmography, and, at least in my eyes, there is something charming about it that has me coming back to rewatch it every once in a while. I would recommend Deep Red to foreign horror fans, slasher enthusiasts, those who like a good mystery, and anyone looking to give their holiday season a Giallo spin. See you later. If you're looking for more Yuletide horror, then check out my reviews of these movies. Thank you to my patrons Michael Museo, Raiders AK, Bronson Wright Wolf, Sean Sheridan, Diana Moe, and Angel Minx88 for funding this review.